The ESS Defiant drifted through the debris field, its scarred hull barely distinguishable from the wreckage of other human vessels scattered across this graveyard in space. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the bridge's observation window, her reflection ghostly against the backdrop of destruction. The ship had once been a diplomatic vessel, all gleaming curves and elegant design. Now it was humanity's last hope, though no one would guess it from looking at its patchwork exterior. Nexus patrol incoming. Lieutenant James Rodriguez called from his sensor station. 3 vessels, Hunter class. They're scanning the debris field. Sarah didn't turn from the window. Time to see if Dr. Hassan's modifications work. Power down everything except life support and the quantum core. The bridge fell into darkness, emergency lights casting a red glow across worried faces. The Defiant had been running for 3 months, since Earth fell to the Nexus Collective. The aliens had appeared from deep space with technology centuries ahead of humanity's best efforts. Their ships moved with perfect precision, their weapons cut through the strongest shields, and their strategies seemed to account for every possible human response. But they hadn't accounted for Dr. Amira Hassan's desperate experiment. "They're getting closer," Rodriguez whispered. The sensor display showed 3 arrow-shaped vessels moving through the debris in a perfect search pattern. The Nexus never deviated from their protocols, never showed imagination or adaptability. It was their greatest strength, and perhaps their only weakness. Sarah felt the quantum core's vibration change through the deck plates. The experimental engine had been a failed diplomatic gift, deemed too unstable for practical use. But desperation had led Dr. Hassan to modify it far beyond its original specifications, turning the Defiant into something unique in human space. The first Nexus ship passed within a kilometer, its sensors sweeping the area. Sarah held her breath. The quantum core's rhythm changed again, its frequency shifting to match the Nexus scan patterns. Dr. Hassan called it technological mimicry. The core could absorb and replicate energy signatures it encountered. "They're not seeing us," Rodriguez reported, amazement in his voice. "Their scans are passing right through us like we're just another piece of debris." The bridge crew remained silent as the patrol continued their methodical search. The Defiant carried over 2,000 refugees in its hastily converted diplomatic spaces, families and survivors from a dozen fallen colonies. Discovery would mean their extinction. Finally, the Nexus ships moved on, their formation never wavering. Sarah waited until they were well out of range before ordering power restored. It worked. Dr. Hassan's voice came over the comm from engineering. The scientist's accent was thicker with excitement. "The core didn't just hide us. It collected data from their scan patterns. I'm seeing technology signatures we've never been able to analyze before." Sarah turned from the window. "Can you use it?" "Give me time. The core's already processing the information, integrating it into our systems. This is what I theorized. It's not just mimicking their technology. It's learning from it, evolving." The bridge lighting flickered as power flowed back through the ship's systems. On her displays, Sarah noticed subtle changes in the energy readings, the ship's systems operating with slightly greater efficiency. "Captain," Rodriguez called out, "I'm detecting a distress signal. Weak, probably running on emergency power. It's coming from the Arcturus colony direction." Sarah studied the tactical display. The Arcturus sector had fallen 2 weeks ago, its defenses shattered by the Nexus fleet. But if there were survivors, how many ships do we have fuel for? She asked her engineering chief. "Maybe 3 jumps if we're conservative," Chief Gloria Martinez replied. "The core's getting more efficient with power distribution, but we're still running on scavenged reactor mass." Sarah nodded. They were refugees themselves, running low on everything except desperation. But they couldn't leave others to die. More importantly, they needed to test Dr. Hassan's modifications under real conditions. If the quantum core could truly learn and adapt Nexus technology, they might have found humanity's first real advantage in this war. "Plot a course for the signal," she ordered, "but keep us in the debris fields as much as possible. We're not a warship." Not yet, Dr. Hassan added softly over the comm. The Defiant's engines hummed to life, their tone somehow different, more harmonious. As they moved through the graveyard of human ships, Sarah watched the subtle changes in her vessel's operation. Power fluctuations stabilized themselves, sensor resolution increased incrementally, and the hull's structural integrity readings showed microscopic improvements. The ship was learning, adapting, becoming something new, just like humanity would have to if they wanted to survive. The Nexus Collective thought they had conquered humanity with their perfect technology and flawless execution. They were about to learn that humanity's greatest strength lay not in perfection, but in their ability to adapt, to take what was broken and make it into something unexpected. The ESS Defiant might have started as a failed diplomatic vessel, but it was evolving into humanity's best hope for survival. And this was only the beginning. The refugee convoy limped through the darkness of deep space, 12 ships of various sizes and conditions following in the Defiant's wake. The Arcturus distress call had led them to more survivors than they'd expected. Civilian transports, mining vessels, even a medical frigate, all running on emergency power and hope. Nexus signatures detected, Rodriguez announced, his hands dancing across his modified sensor console. The interface had changed over the past week, adapting to his usage patterns in ways Dr. Hassan still couldn't fully explain. 3 heavy cruisers coming in from the galactic north. Sarah studied the tactical display, noting how the Nexus ships moved in their characteristic perfect formation. Time to intercept. 20 minutes at their current speed. We can't outrun them, not with the civilian ships. In engineering, Dr. Hassan's voice came over the comm, tight with excitement. Captain, the quantum core's response to their presence. It's different this time. It's not just mimicking their energy signatures anymore. It's suggesting improvements. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Suggesting. The core's been processing all the Nexus technology signatures we've encountered, but now it's combining them in new ways, ways they never intended. It's like, Hassan paused, searching for words. It's like the core has learned their language but decided to write its own poetry with it. Chief Martinez cut in. Whatever it's doing, it's affecting our weapon systems. The modified pulse cannons are showing energy patterns I've never seen before. Sarah looked at the refugee ships on her display. They couldn't run, not anymore. And they couldn't let the Nexus take these survivors. Dr. Hassan, how confident are you in these modifications? They're untested, but the theoretical models suggest. Doctor, yes or no? A pause. Yes, Captain. The core knows what it's doing, even if we don't fully understand how. Sarah took a deep breath. All ships, this is Captain Chen. Execute Emergency Protocol Delta. Power down everything except life support and prepare for possible rapid maneuvers. The refugee fleet disappeared from conventional sensors, their ships going dark against the void. On the Defiance Bridge, Sarah watched the Nexus cruisers approach. They were beautiful in their way, all clean lines and perfect symmetry, their hulls gleaming with an inner light that spoke of power beyond human understanding. They're scanning the area, Rodriguez reported. Standard search pattern. Wait, something's different. They're adjusting their formation. They've detected something. Sarah felt the quantum core's vibration change through the deck plates, its rhythm becoming more complex, almost musical. The ship's systems responded, power flowing in new patterns through circuits that had rewritten themselves over the past week. They're charging weapons, Rodriguez warned. Captain, their targeting systems just went offline. They're having trouble maintaining formation. Dr. Hassan's voice was triumphant. The core isn't just hiding us anymore. It's reaching out, interfering with their systems. Their technology is based on perfect mathematical harmony. We're introducing discord. The Nexus ships broke formation for the first time Sarah had ever seen, their movements becoming erratic as their systems fought against invisible interference. Status of our weapons. Online and different, Chief Martinez reported. The pulse cannons have reconfigured themselves. Power output is off the charts, but in ways our sensors can barely understand. Target the lead ship, Sarah ordered. Let's see what we've learned from our friends. The Defiant's weapons fired, but what emerged wasn't the standard energy pulse they'd started with. Instead, writhing tendrils of quantum energy reached across space, ignoring shields and armor to wrap around the Nexus vessel. Where they touched, the alien ship's perfect surface began to ripple and distort. Their power systems are cascading, Rodriguez reported, wonder in his voice. The quantum tendrils, they're not destroying the ship, they're infecting it, corrupting their systems with chaos. The lead Nexus ship's elegant form began to break down, its once perfect geometry dissolving into random patterns. The other two cruisers attempted to help their flagship, but their own systems were struggling against the quantum core's influence. Signal the civilian ships, Sarah commanded. Tell them to power up weapons, anything they have. The Nexus can't cope with multiple sources of chaos. The refugee fleet came alive, their makeshift weapons firing on the confused Nexus vessels. Most of their shots wouldn't have scratched the alien shields under normal circumstances, but with their systems corrupted by the Defiant's quantum interference, every hit caused more chaos to spread through their perfect technology. The Nexus ships began to retreat, their formation shattered, their once immaculate hulls now marred by patches of quantum corruption. As they fled, their engines left erratic trails through space, nothing like their usual precise plasma streams. They're gone, Rodriguez confirmed. But, Captain, I'm picking up changes in our hull structure. The quantum core, it's incorporating some of their technology into our systems, but not in any way they designed it to work. Sarah watched as patches of her ship's hull began to shimmer with the same inner light as the Nexus vessels, but unlike their perfect patterns, the Defiant's new sections pulsed with organic, almost living energy. Dr. Hassan, she called out, what exactly is happening to our ship? Evolution, Captain, the scientist replied, awe in her voice. The quantum core isn't just copying their technology. It's forcing it to evolve, to become something new, something that embraces chaos instead of fighting it. And it's changing us in the process. Sarah looked at her bridge crew, saw the hope beginning to replace fear in their eyes. The Defiant had just proven that humanity could fight back. More than that, they could win. Not by matching the Nexus's perfect technology, but by transforming it into something they could never predict or control. Send word to the fleet, she ordered. Tell them we found our weapon. Now we just need to learn how to use it. The Defiant led its refugee fleet deeper into space, its hull continuing to shift and change, becoming something that was neither fully human nor Nexus technology. They had discovered their hidden strength, not in perfection, but in their ability to take the enemy's greatest power and turn it into beautiful chaos. The maintenance bay of the Defiant barely resembled a human facility anymore. Sarah walked through corridors where the walls pulsed with living light, watching as Dr. Hassan and her team worked to understand what their ship was becoming. In the month since their first victory over the Nexus cruisers, the quantum core's influence had spread throughout the vessel, transforming it into something that existed between order and chaos. We've confirmed contact with 3 more refugee fleets, Rodriguez reported, falling into step beside her. Like the ship, her crew had adapted to their new reality. Rodriguez's sensor interface now wrapped around him like a cocoon of light, feeding him information through patterns he felt rather than saw. They all have ships with experimental or salvage technology. Nothing as advanced as our quantum core, but enough to work with. Sarah finished. The Defiant had become more than a ship. It was now a template for survival, proving that humanity could fight back by embracing transformation instead of fearing it. They entered the central lab, where Dr. Hassan stood surrounded by floating displays, showing the ship's ongoing metamorphosis. The scientist's eyes gleamed with the same inner light that now ran through the Defiant systems, a side effect of working so closely with the evolving technology. The last attack taught us something crucial, Hassan said without preamble. The quantum core doesn't just corrupt Nexus technology. It forces it to evolve. to become something new, something that operates on principles they can't understand because it doesn't follow their rules of perfect order. Sarah watched a display showing the Defiant's current configuration. Parts of the hull now functioned like a living organism, healing damage and redistributing energy in ways that made their original shields look primitive. Can we replicate this in other ships? Better. Hassan gestured, and the display shifted to show schematics of various vessel types. The core wants to share its evolution. When we bring other ships close enough, it reaches out to their systems, teaches them how to begin their own transformation. Each ship evolves differently, becoming unique, unpredictable. Chief Martinez joined them, her engineering uniform now integrated with circuitry that linked her directly to the ship's systems. The refugee fleet we saved last week. Their mining vessels have developed weapons that phase through Nexus shields like they don't exist. The medical frigate can now regenerate hull damage using principles that violate conventional physics. Every ship finds its own path of evolution. A sudden alert pulsed through the ship's neural network. They'd all started thinking of it that way, as something alive and aware. Rodriguez's sensor cocoon flared with new data. Multiple Nexus signatures, he reported. A full battle fleet. They're hunting us systematically, trying to eliminate the infection we represent before it can spread. Sarah felt the quantum core's reaction, a surge of anticipation that resonated through the ship and crew alike. How many ships? 20 capital ships, multiple support vessels. They're adapting their tactics, learning from their previous defeats. So are we, Hassan said softly. The displays around her shifted, showing the approaching Nexus fleet. The core has been anticipating this. Every encounter, every piece of their technology we've corrupted has taught us more about how they think, how they fight, and how to turn their strength against them. Sarah opened a channel to their growing fleet of transformed vessels. All ships, this is Captain Chen. The Nexus wants to stop our evolution. Let's show them why that's impossible. The battle that followed redefined space combat. The Nexus fleet moved with their characteristic precision, but now their formations were designed to minimize exposure to quantum corruption. Their weapons had been modified to resist chaos, their shields recalibrated to maintain perfect geometry even under attack. But they still couldn't predict how each human ship would fight. The Defiant led the charge, its hull rippling with energy that existed in multiple phases of space-time simultaneously. Mining ships turned asteroid fields into weapons, their evolved mining beams reshaping reality itself. Civilian transports phased between dimensions, appearing inside Nexus formations to spread confusion and chaos. Their adaptive algorithms can't keep up, Rodriguez reported, his sensor cocoon pulsing with battle data. Every time they adjust to one of our ships, 3 more attack in completely different ways. Sarah watched as a former passenger liner, now transformed into something that looked more like a living crystal, phased through a Nexus destroyer. In its wake, the perfect alien vessel began to sprout organic growths that pulsed with quantum energy. The infection spread through their fleet, each corrupted ship becoming a new vector of chaos. They're trying to retreat, Martinez called out. Their command and control is breaking down. They can't maintain formation with so many ships operating outside their parameters. The Nexus fleet split apart, individual vessels fleeing in different directions as their perfectly coordinated battle plan collapsed. But they left behind something valuable: data, information, patterns that the quantum core could absorb and transform. The core is evolving again, Hassan reported, excitement making her voice tremble. Their countermeasures, their adaptations, it's learning from them, finding new ways to spread chaos, and it's sharing what it learns with every ship in our fleet. Sarah looked at her bridge, now more alien than human in appearance, but somehow feeling more natural than ever. The crew worked in perfect harmony with their evolved systems, each person and machine growing together into something unprecedented. Send word to all human outposts and refugee fleets, she ordered. Tell them it's time to stop running. The Nexus thought they could contain our evolution, control our transformation. Instead, they just helped us become something stronger. The Defiant led its fleet of impossible ships deeper into space, each vessel continuing to change and grow. They were no longer just survivors. They were becoming a force that could challenge the Nexus's perfect order with beautiful chaos, and they were only beginning to discover what they could become. The Nexus command station hung in space like a perfect geometric sculpture, its crystalline surfaces reflecting starlight in mathematically precise patterns. Inside her ready room aboard the Defiant, Sarah studied the intel feeds streaming through the living walls around her. The quantum core had evolved enough to tap into Nexus communication networks, translating their perfectly ordered data streams into something human minds could comprehend. Their defense grid is adapting constantly, Rodriguez reported. His sensor interface had grown more sophisticated, now extending through his nervous system like a second skin of light. They're running billions of simulations, trying to predict how our ships might attack. Let them try, Dr. Hassan said, her form flickering slightly as she projected herself from engineering through the ship's evolved communication system. They still think in terms of mathematical perfection. They can't simulate chaos. Sarah nodded, watching the tactical display where their fleet gathered in the darkness of deep space. 50 ships now, each one unique in its evolution. Former cargo haulers that could fold space itself, passenger liners that had developed symbiotic relationships with their crews, mining vessels that could turn enemy technology against itself. No two ships fought the same way, and all of them were still evolving. The latest intelligence from our infiltration ships, she asked. Martinez's avatar appeared, her engineering uniform now more like a second skin of living circuitry. The Nexus is struggling to maintain control of their conquered territories. Every time they encounter one of our evolved ships, the corruption spreads. Their perfect systems can't handle the quantum irregularities we introduce. They're having to abandon outposts, quarantine entire sectors. More importantly, Hassan added, their attempts to adapt to us are causing problems in their own technology. They're trying to build in countermeasures, make their systems more resistant to chaos. But you can't force evolution to follow rules. The more they try to control it, the more vulnerable they become. Sarah stood, feeling the ship's deck shift slightly beneath her feet to better support her stance. The Defiant had grown increasingly attuned to its crew, anticipating their needs, supporting their actions. Signal the fleet. It's time to show the Nexus that they're not the hunters anymore. The attack began not with weapons, but with silence. The human fleet approached the command station using evolved stealth systems that didn't just hide them. They made their very existence uncertain. Nexus sensors detected them as probability waves rather than solid objects, unable to determine their exact position or nature until it was too late. Their outer defense grid is activating, Rodriguez reported as they closed in. But their targeting systems can't lock onto anything. We're existing in too many potential states simultaneously. Sarah felt the quantum core's excitement ripple through the ship. All vessels, initiate chaos protocols. Hit them with everything we've evolved into. The battle that followed defied conventional physics. The Defiant led the charge, its hull splitting into multiple quantum states that existed simultaneously in different regions of spacetime. Nexus weapons passed through where they thought the ship was, only to find it had technically never been there. Former mining ships turned their evolved extraction beams on the station's perfect crystalline structure, not damaging it but transforming it. Sections of the station began to shift and flow, perfect geometry dissolving into organic patterns that spread like a virus through connected systems. Their computer core is trying to compensate, Hassan reported, her voice tight with concentration as she directed the quantum core's efforts. They're attempting to isolate corrupted sections, maintain perfect order in their remaining systems, but they can't. The chaos is exponential now. Transformed passenger liners phased through the station's walls, their evolved systems seeding quantum irregularities directly into the Nexus command and control networks. Defense platforms turned on each other as their targeting computers failed to distinguish order from chaos. "Multiple Nexus ships incoming," Rodriguez called out. Their formations are breaking down. Their own defensive adaptations are making them vulnerable to each other's systems. Sarah watched as the Nexus relief fleet arrived in disarray, their usually perfect coordination shattered by the very countermeasures they'd developed to fight human chaos. Ships collided as their navigation systems failed to account for quantum uncertainties. Weapons misfired as targeting computers couldn't determine which reality to engage. "The station's central core is reaching critical uncertainty," Martins reported. "Their attempts to maintain order are accelerating the breakdown. They're doing more damage to themselves than we are." The command station's perfect form began to unravel, sections of it transforming into new configurations that pulsed with organic energy. Nexus ships fled in disarray, their crews unable to cope with systems that no longer followed logical rules. "Send the message," Sarah ordered. "Let every Nexus outpost and colony see what happened here. Let them understand that their perfect order cannot contain human evolution." The Defiant and its fleet withdrew, leaving behind a transformed command station that now pulsed with the same living energy that powered their own ships. But they weren't retreating. They were hunting for the next target. The Nexus had started this war thinking they could impose their perfect order on humanity. Instead, they had forced humanity to evolve beyond anything they could control or predict. "Multiple distress calls coming in," Rodriguez reported with a grin. "Seems like other Nexus installations are experiencing unexpected system irregularities. The chaos is spreading faster than they can contain it." Sarah looked at her bridge crew. Each of them now as evolved as their ship, existing in partnership with technology that defied the very laws of physics. "Plot a course for the next target. The Nexus wanted to hunt us into extinction. Let's show them why that was their biggest mistake." The human fleet moved out, each ship continuing to change and grow, spreading beautiful chaos through the perfectly ordered universe of their enemies. The hunters had become the hunted, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Nexus homeworld hung in space like a perfect jewel, its surface covered in crystalline cities arranged in precise geometric patterns. Sarah stood on the Defiance Bridge, now an organic space that seemed to breathe with its crew, watching as the largest fleet humanity had ever assembled gathered for their final battle. 300 ships, each one unique in its evolution, each one a testament to humanity's ability to transform chaos into strength. The original refugee vessels had become something beyond imagination. Cruise liners that could bend reality, cargo ships that existed in quantum superposition, mining vessels that could infect enemy technology with creative disorder. The Nexus has committed their entire home fleet to defense, Rodriguez reported from within his sensor cocoon, now a living extension of his consciousness. Over 500 capital ships, all running their latest anti-chaos protocols. They still think they can contain evolution with mathematics. Dr. Hassan's voice came through the ship's neural network. The scientist had become something more than human, existing partly in normal space and partly in the quantum realm where the core operated. Every countermeasure they developed just makes them more vulnerable to transformation. Sarah felt the Defiant's anticipation through the deck plates, through the living metal that had replaced her command chair, through the quantum energies that now flowed through her own evolved biology. Status of the homeworld. Their planetary systems are beautiful, Martins reported, her form shimmering with engineering data. Perfect crystalline computers running on pure mathematical principles. But that perfection is their weakness. They've optimized everything so completely that there's no room for adaptation. The Nexus fleet hung in space before them, ships arranged in formations so precise they looked like abstract art. Their weapons were charged, their shields modified with every countermeasure they'd developed against human chaos. They were as ready as their perfect order could make them. They weren't ready enough. All ships, Sarah broadcast to the human fleet, initiate final evolution protocols. Show them what chaos can really do. The battle began like a dance of reality itself. Human ships phased between dimensions, appearing in multiple places simultaneously, each one attacking in ways that defied prediction. The Defiant led the charge, its hull splitting into quantum possibilities that existed in all spaces at once. The Nexus fleet's perfect formation shattered as their targeting computers failed to cope with ships that couldn't be predicted. Their modified shields, designed to resist chaos, instead became conduits for it. Every countermeasure they'd developed turned against them, their very attempts at adaptation becoming vectors for transformation. Their command and control is collapsing, Rodriguez reported with fierce joy. They can't maintain formation when they can't even agree on which reality their ships exist in. Sarah watched as transformed mining ships turned their evolved extraction beams on the crystalline cities below. Not destroying them, but changing them, introducing quantum uncertainty into their perfect structures. The cities began to pulse with new life, their rigid geometries flowing into organic patterns that spread like beautiful infection. Their planetary defense grid is trying to compensate, Martine is called out. They're attempting to isolate corrupted systems, maintain order in. She stopped, laughing. They just made it worse. Their isolation protocols are accelerating the transformation. The Nexus fleet broke apart, individual ships firing blindly at enemies they couldn't properly perceive. Their weapons passed through quantum ghosts while evolved human vessels appeared inside their formations, spreading chaos through touch alone. Every ship they corrupted became a new vector for transformation, turning their own perfect technology against them. The planetary core, Hassan's voice held wonder. Their primary systems, their perfect computers. They're trying to run so many simultaneous anti-chaos protocols that they're creating quantum uncertainty on their own. They're evolving themselves into chaos by trying to fight it. Sarah felt the quantum core's satisfaction as the Nexus homeworld began to transform. The crystalline cities flowed like liquid mercury, reforming into new shapes that followed organic rather than mathematical principles. Their perfect computer systems, unable to cope with uncertainty, began generating it instead. Multiple surrender signals, Rodriguez reported. Their ships are powering down weapons. The planetary government, they're requesting cessation of hostilities. Through the Defiant's evolved sensors, Sarah watched the Nexus civilization begin to change. Their rigid order collapsed not into destruction, but into beautiful transformation. The quantum chaos humanity had brought wasn't destroying them. It was freeing them from their own perfection. Send the response, she ordered. Tell them we'll cease the attack if they accept evolution. If they're willing to learn that perfection isn't the only path to advancement. The response came not in words, but in action. Across the Nexus homeworld, crystalline structures continued to flow and change, but now with purpose rather than panic. They were learning to embrace uncertainty, to find strength in adaptation rather than rigid order. They're asking for teachers, Hassan reported with amazement. They want to understand how we learn to work with chaos instead of fighting it. How we turned evolution itself into an art form. Sarah looked at her bridge crew, each of them now existing in partnership with technology that defied the very laws of physics. They had started as refugees in a broken-down diplomatic vessel, running from an enemy that seemed invincible in its perfection. Now they were something else entirely, guides who could show a rigid civilization how to dance with chaos. Signal all ships, she ordered. The war is over, now the real evolution begins. The Defiant hung in space above the transforming Nexus homeworld, its quantum core pulsing with satisfaction. They had won not by destroying their enemy's perfect order, but by showing them a better way. A way that embraced change, that found strength in uncertainty, that turned chaos itself into a symphony of endless possibility. Humanity had evolved beyond anyone's imagination, and they had brought their former enemies with them into a future where the only constant was transformation itself. It was not an ending, but a beginning. The start of an evolution that would reshape the galaxy one impossible change at a time.